Fantastic, folks. Thanks everyone for being here today. We're going to get started here in just a second as more people are joining the webinar. Thanks everyone for being on time. Fantastic, folks. We'll get started here in just a second. We got a couple people still joining. We'll get started here in about 30 seconds more. Fantastic. Thanks everyone for being here today. Today's webinar is on everything related to Microsoft 365 and how it can really be your central ecosystem for storing all of your files, managing all team collaboration, interacting with clients, and beyond that. This is actually the fourth time we've done this webinar this year. We've had such great turnout from this webinar. So many people are using Microsoft 365, the tools, but are hungry to learn more and are really struggling with how to combine everything. What are the best practices in Microsoft 365 and how to get more help? As you'll learn in this webinar, Microsoft 365 doesn't always make things the easiest to use or the most intuitive. And so some of our goals today are to give you some best practices around Microsoft 365, but then also how to think about the different applications, how to combine them, and how to utilize them. So great. Today's webinar is sponsored by NW Techs. We are a technology provider that helps organizations really manage their IT more effectively. So cybersecurity, phone systems, things like Microsoft 365 really help organizations utilize and become a part of their team and help them with their IT stuff. I'm the director of marketing. We've actually have a whole archive of other webinars. You can go to nwtex.com/webinars. We have webinars on cybersecurity, phone systems, password managers, all sorts of different topics. And in addition to other things around Microsoft 365. So great, we have a full agenda today. So before I jump into the content, I want to give you kind of a rundown of what's happening and what is going to be going on. Really, the focus here is going through a couple of things. We're going to do a high-level overview of the benefits of the cloud and what would be some of the benefits of moving your on-premise infrastructure to something like Microsoft 365. We're going to do a quick comparison of Microsoft 365 and Google Workspace and the Google suite of products. We're going to talk about kind of the world of Microsoft, what's changing, how have they changed things. We're going to do an overview of SharePoint, OneDrive. We're going to do a deep dive into Microsoft Teams, some of the best practices we have learned, how to utilize it. Where does it fit in your organization in kind of the team collaboration tools and just communication tools? We'll be doing an overview of the future of Microsoft Teams, and then we'll also have some time for Q&A. We received about 300 questions from a lot of you that registered for this event. So we'll be going through some of those questions that you submitted. But if you have questions throughout this event, please submit them in the Q&A. If you're watching live on LinkedIn or YouTube, you can also submit those questions in the comments, and we'll try to get all those as well. And then we'll also, this will be recorded. So if you want a copy of the recording afterwards and want to share it with your team, you will receive that in the next 24 hours or so. If you are watching, if you registered for the event, we'll also send out a copy of the slides as well, so you can go through those. Awesome. Great. So we're going to jump right into the content. So the first thing is why the cloud and the benefits of the cloud. So specifically, especially around file storage. So first of all, when we're looking at Microsoft 365, they have a lot of tools like Azure, where you can host your servers in the cloud and do a lot of your domain controls in the cloud. It has things like SharePoint and OneDrive that can do a lot of your file storage. So when we're talking about why the cloud, we're really comparing the cloud versus having an on-premise server. And so there's lots of good reasons to have an on-premise server. But if you're a small organization, if you're under 100 employees, It honestly, the reasons for having a server are becoming less and less every single day because it's becoming more cost effective, more stable, more secure, easier to manage, less points of failure for your organization to have everything in the cloud. So first, let's talk about why the cloud in some areas here. So number one, 80% of Fortune 500 companies are in the Microsoft cloud. So a lot of enterprise organizations have moved to the cloud because of kind of all the benefits I just mentioned, and some of them we'll go through as well. So when you're evaluating whether you keep your server, 10 years ago, the cloud wasn't capable or wasn't cost effective to ultimately be that solution to have all your stuff in the cloud. But whether it's your email, right? Maybe a lot of you have a Microsoft Exchange server that you're using for your email, or you're using it for file storage, or you're using it to host your applications like QuickBooks or line of business applications like a practice manager or a CRM. A lot of those can be moved to the cloud and be hosted in the cloud, whether it's in Microsoft 365 or other cloud solutions. So first of all, kind of the first point here is that, hey, you can trust Microsoft's cloud because once again, 80% of the Fortune 500 companies are utilizing it because of all those reasons I just mentioned. The cloud also helps improve security and enables compliance. So if you are an organization that is in a regulatory organization, such as a medical organization, financial organization, law firm, even marketing organizations and marketing agencies that deal with a lot of data come under scrutiny. And we're seeing a lot of our marketing agencies need to fill out security questionnaires around data compliance if they want to get a new client or if they want to maintain their clients. So security and compliance, as we all know, especially in those industries, when you're dealing with a lot of PII, personal identifiable information is kind of an industry term. So things like full names, social security numbers, email addresses, mailing addresses, bank account information, medical records, financial records, all of those things are ultimately a huge security risk, and you need to show compliance, especially if you're one of those, in one of those industries, law firms, legal, financial, medical, even accounting firms, tax preparers, marketing agencies, like I mentioned, anyone that works for the government are going to need to have the best in class security in place and demonstrate compliance. And those things are two different things, right? You can have great security, but you have to demonstrate it as well. So Microsoft's ecosystem, the reason, and we'll talk about this in a little bit as far as Google and the other solutions you can use out there, from our standpoint, the reason why we doubled down on Microsoft 365 internally, it's what we use internally and what we deploy for about 80% of our clients, is because of its security and compliance features. You can get extremely granular when it comes to setting up permissions, locking people out, having additional security features in place. And I'll give an example of that. Actually, a couple months ago, one of our engineers emailed me or actually reached out to me on Teams and was like, hey, Taylor, I noticed somebody in Eastern Europe is trying to access your email account. Do you know why that is? And I was like, I have no idea why that is. I'm not in Eastern Europe right now. And so he was able to go into Microsoft 365 and go into my email and put in additional security features. A lot of the other email providers out there, whether it's Google Workspace, Gmail, things like that, are just a little bit behind the curve when it comes to just security in general and compliance. They've done improvements. Even Microsoft, even Google Workspaces in the past couple of months have done improvements, but ultimately Microsoft has done a phenomenal job and is one step ahead of everyone else. So the cloud in general helps you improve security and compliance, right? You're able to demonstrate that way more easily than having an on-premise server. And then Microsoft is just one step ahead of everyone else. As far as, maintaining security on a server, an on-premise server in your office, you have to do all sorts of things like VPN if you want to access it remotely, like you've probably experienced. And it can be very cumbersome. And, as much as we all love to think that, if it's in our building or in our home office or take it home with me, it's more secure. It's kind of an illusion. The cloud-based providers like Microsoft and Google have so much more. They have billions of dollars worth of security invested in their infrastructure, and they're not perfect, right? Ultimately, but they are doing way more than the average, especially small business owner. And even enterprise companies, right, that have hundreds of millions or millions of dollars to invest in security, they're all moving to the cloud because Microsoft and Google and a lot of these providers are doing such a great job in general. Awesome. Let's move on to the next one. The cloud helps you reduce cost. So having an on-premise server for file storage or for any line of business applications is just really expensive. If you have a server, you know this. You had to buy the server, which was probably $5,000 to $10,000. In addition to getting somebody to set it up, you have to maintain it, which is you have to pay somebody to maintain it. You have to pay an IT team to maintain it, and it's a lot of work. A server, if you're a small business under 100 employees, is probably 98% of the time is the most complex piece of infrastructure you have in place. So if you can eliminate that server, a huge win, and to simplify your organization and to ultimately help you be more efficient and cost effective. So servers, not only do you have to have the upfront expense, you have the IT maintenance of it. You have the additional, every 5 to 10 years, you have to replace the server. You have to have all the software and backups and things like that in place. And then all the additional internet requirements, right? And power requirements and networking requirements for your office to make sure that people can access the server remotely. VPNs, there's all these costs associated with it. And so when you're comparing cloud versus servers, on-premise servers, the cloud, yes, you have some sort of ongoing subscription, but if you amortize that over 3 to 5 years, it's probably the cost of the server, if not close to it. And if you add on the IT expenses of the server, you're most likely saving money by moving to the cloud. And then in addition to that, there's just tons of extra features you get in the cloud and tons more collaboration, scalability, headache. And kind of tying into our next point here, number 4 here, helps you simplify your IT management. Part of having an on-premise server is you have a huge single point of failure for your entire infrastructure. Ultimately, if the power were to go out, the internet were to go out, and you've experienced this if you have a server, I know you have, because every single client I've talked to has experienced this at some point or another. If the internet sputters, if your switch goes out, if the power goes out, anything like that, you have to reset the server, you have a glitch in the server, your whole infrastructure is down, right? And so it's extremely inefficient for your organization, and ultimately it's very complex trying to ensure that's maintained. So having things in the cloud is not only simplifying your organization because it's just more easily accessible, but then you also eliminate that point of failure. The cloud promotes agility and keeps you current. So the cloud, if you're in the cloud, whether it's Microsoft 365, you can move from one cloud provider to another much more easily than you can moving from a server to the cloud. So let's say Microsoft, in 5 years, Google is the prominent provider, or there's another cloud hosted solution provider out there. You can move to them and it's much easier. The cloud also is being updated and ongoing maintenance to the cloud is so much quicker than you ever could do for your server. And then it's also, I don't mention here, is it's scalable. So if you want to open up another office, you want to merge with another company, you're buying another company, you can spin up a server much quicker than setting up a new server in a new location and things like that. So there's lots of benefits to the cloud. This is kind of just a high arching overview of whether specifically, we're going to talk a lot about file storage today. And specifically, if you're storing your files on workstations or a server, and we'll talk about when we get into OneDrive and SharePoint, there's so many more advantages to having the stuff in the cloud as far as collaboration, sharing with clients or employees or vendors, security, compliance, all those things. But in addition, it's so expensive to have a server, and it's such a pain to maintain them. Coming from an IT provider that manages servers for our clients and for companies all across the United States, we know how painful it is, and our engineers know how painful it is to manage servers. And so if we can eliminate that and make things more simplistic, it's a big win for everyone. So great, let's move into the next area, which is really talking about, and this is a lot of people ask this question in the forums, is what's the difference between Microsoft 365 and Google Workspace? And what are the advantages of it? So first, number one, we've already talked about this, Microsoft security and security capabilities and really being able to lock things down above really Google and the other providers. Google is rapidly trying to catch up with Microsoft 365, but from what we've seen, the capabilities that Microsoft has is to put in additional security, especially if you're a law firm, financial firm, CPA firm, medical organization, marketing organization that deals with a lot of sensitive information. You need to have the best security in place. And we'll talk specifically about file storage in a little bit, that how to do secure file storage, and how Microsoft OneDrive and SharePoint do a great job of that. So ultimately, Google, if you're not in a highly regulated organization, if you are not storing lots of sensitive data, and maybe have enough security features in place. And we have probably about 20% of our clients still using Microsoft. Still using Google. And I love Google products like Gmail. There's not a better email provider than Gmail. And so it's not that I think Microsoft has all their applications are better than Google, but just when you're looking at from an overarching security standpoint, which is one of the most important aspects you have to look at for your organization, especially nowadays where there's so many breaches and cyber crime is exponentially increasing in the past couple of years, that it's just so important. So for our organization, we've doubled down on Microsoft 365 because of that. Hugely important. I personally love Gmail way more than Outlook. It's a way better email provider. And so I think from an email standpoint, Gmail's awesome. Google, they're a search company. They get search. So when you're trying to search for something or categorize something, they get it. A little tidbit side note on there is Microsoft 365's privacy is also kind of one step above Google. Google, they're reading your files, they're reading your emails, and they're using that information to service you ads. So let's not be confused in that Google, when they search, because their search capabilities are so powerful in Google Drive and Gmail and all those things, they're searching your emails for keywords to then serve you ads later. So there's also nuances to that where Google privacy standpoint is also, just not as top tier as Microsoft. Awesome. So let's talk about Microsoft Teams. So this application, Google has some feature, has their Google Hangouts and Google Meet, and they're changing their names every day, which used to be Google's G Suite and apps, and now their kind of collaboration tool is Google Meets, and then it was Hangouts, and so it changes every day. So if you're as confused as I am, that's okay. It's complicated. So ultimately, the Microsoft Teams application has just way more features, and we'll talk about Teams in a little bit. But Microsoft Teams has just it's such a powerful team collaboration tool. There's really no collaboration tool that is as superior as Teams, in our opinion. Even Slack, Slack is a great collaboration tool. We used to use Slack. We moved to Teams because it was that much better. So ultimately, Microsoft Teams is that much better. Awesome. Compliance. So compliance is another aspect, being able to demonstrate compliance when you are filling out a security questionnaire, or if you're a HIPAA data security questionnaire, or an IRS safeguarding questionnaire, any sort of data security, SOC 2, ISO, NIST framework, anything that you have to fill out or it asks you to fill out data security, Microsoft gives you more of the back-end capabilities to demonstrate that. Last but not least, the downsides of Microsoft 365 is it's really not as user-friendly ultimately. And that's where you should heavily rely on your IT department or an IT provider like us to help you implement it, because it has awesome features and it can do a lot. Like the Microsoft ecosystem is so powerful. I'm learning new things about it every day. And I've been a user of it for years and done a lot of research for this personally. And then our organization has implemented a lot. So it can do a lot, but Microsoft, God love them, but they do not make things the most easy. So especially when it comes to setup and management, they don't make things super easy. So finding a Microsoft partner or a reseller or somebody that can help you navigate how to set things up, how to get people trained on it is super important, because if you've ever tried to set up yourself, you know how painful it is to set up Microsoft 365. So that's a side note. That's probably the biggest downside, is that it's not the most user-friendly, especially when it comes to setup and management. Once you start utilizing it, once you start knowing how things work, it's like Excel or Word or PowerPoint. They're super powerful tools, but it takes somewhat of a learning curve. Same thing goes with OneDrive, SharePoint, Teams, any of their cloud-hosted tools, or those tools, is that it takes some training and setup and ongoing management to know how to set up permissions and sharing and all that fun stuff. Awesome. Let's move on to the next thing. So in this comparison, we'll talk about this a little bit later too, is Microsoft has renamed their products. It's not Microsoft Office 365 anymore. It's now Microsoft 365. And they're really expanding their services where this might be a little blur on your end, but ultimately they're adding all sorts of different tools and features, and they're relabeling it and adding more subscriptions. So they have literally 8 subscriptions now, which is a little bit cumbersome to figure out which one you need. And once again, ask a Microsoft partner, a reseller, or one of them. So if you want help, please reach out to us, or ask your IT department to help you implement it and figure out which licenses you need, because they can do a lot of different stuff, whether you need server capabilities, Azure, or whether you need Teams, or how much file storage you need, all that fun stuff. But the main thing you should know is that they're renaming things to Microsoft 365 from Office 365, because they're now expanding into things like endpoint management. So they're going to have tools that go onto your actual workstation to help you manage security, to help you manage, and really kind of encompassing all of your technology, so you can have everything in one place. Great. And then this is also some of their plans. They've renamed their plans, their base plan, which is their Office 365 E3, to their Microsoft 365 Business. They've increased some of the data, so you can store more in OneDrive. You can do up to a gigabyte per user. That's a really big thing to know, because if you're storing files on your server right now, if you're paying for Microsoft 365, each one of your users under the Microsoft 365 Business license gets 1 terabyte of file storage data. That's a ton, right? And so unless you're dealing with like video files and you're a marketing agency or something like that, that's plenty of data. That's plenty of space for storing your files. So you're probably already paying for Microsoft 365 if you're using Outlook. And so you can move all your files to the cloud, get rid of your server, simplify things, and then utilize all the benefits of OneDrive and SharePoint. Awesome. Let's jump into SharePoint and some of the differences of SharePoint, what's SharePoint and OneDrive. And every day I still have to go look up kind of what the differences of SharePoint and OneDrive are, because they are very different, but similar in ways. SharePoint is really a platform for all internal communication. Documentation really is super helpful for documentation, and having some sort of business processes and all these different things, surveys, voting, having a calendar, documents, and really kind of as a central internal hub for your business. So not so much interacting with clients or vendors, but really internal. So how are you, and for us, we use SharePoint for all of our internal documents, right? Over here, where we can store just internal documents that we don't share with clients, but are just for us, whether it's business processes and stuff like that. SharePoint, you can do a ton of other things too. You can program it to do all sorts of crazy stuff. But ultimately think of it as kind of an internal a board, if you would, or an internal employee board, calendar, place where people can get updates and things like that. One of our partners uses it in this way. This is Pax8, and they use it for, as you can see up here, here's some of the tabs they use it, news, branded assets, committees, conference rooms, kind of their internal education. So if you're a large organization, probably between the 200 employees to 1,000 employees, you'll definitely have some needs for some of this as you have different departmental needs. If you're a smaller organization under 100 employees, you may use SharePoint for just internal documents, having a calendar for events, having documents for processes and procedures, making announcements company-wide. Teams does some of this, and we'll talk later about how Teams is, your collaboration platform for all of that. So there is that as well. Great. Let's move over into OneDrive. So like I mentioned, SharePoint is great for internal file storage, whereas OneDrive is really great for external file storage. And really the main benefit here is you can share, you have your own personal vault, which only you can see. And then you have kind of folders, and you can share with your team members or with your clients. And really there's the benefits of OneDrive are this. So if you're storing files locally, you're not able to collaborate in real time with other people within files, right? You can open up a file in OneDrive in Microsoft 365 and actually open up an Excel document, a Word document, a PowerPoint document in OneDrive and synchronously collaborate with a client, a team member, a vendor on a document in real time. It also has advanced revisioning. So you can look at documents in OneDrive and Microsoft 365 and see different versions of it from the past, 30 days or so. This will give you just a lot more collaboration, real-time collaboration tools. Whereas if you're storing things on your server, you've experienced this, the wrong version, somebody makes an edit, forgets to upload it, they delete the wrong one, and you get the wrong version of the Word document or files. OneDrive, you can store other types of files in here. So you can store PDFs, you can store other types of doc files and open those up and look at them together. But really it's those Microsoft specific documents like Excel, Word, that you have such powerful capabilities to collaborate with people. So yeah, the main ones being the synchronous, editing documents together, whether it's a client or a vendor or your team member in real time, having multiple versions of the document you can go back and restore to, leaving comments in the documents, right? You can leave a comment for somebody and be like, hey, check this out. I need you to look at this. There's so many benefits of having your Word, Excel, PowerPoint documents in OneDrive for those features. And then all the sharing capabilities, which we'll talk about in a second and dive a little bit deeper into sharing files securely, because that's a huge, super important thing every organization should know is how to securely share files. And we'll talk about that in a second. So yeah, ultimately, you can store any type of format of document into OneDrive. And then for a lot of the real-time collaboration, you can do that with the Microsoft specific documents. So great. Thanks for asking questions, folks. I see some questions in the chat and also in the Q&A. Please submit the questions to the Q&A. That way I can make sure I get to your questions if they're in the chat. Sometimes we miss them. So submit them to the Q&A. We'll try to answer all your questions here towards the end of the webinar. But thanks for submitting those, and we'll definitely get to all of them. Awesome. So let's talk about secure file sharing. So if you, first of all, ingrain this into your brain and into your team and into your company that sending files via email is not secure. Sending anything via email is not secure. I repeat that. Sending stuff by email is not secure. The only time it could be secure is if you have an encryption on top of it, which is very rare. 99% of the companies I interact with do not have encryption enabled on their Microsoft or Google or any of those. It's an additional app you have to purchase to get it on top of it. And so that you can send files securely that way. But when somebody sends you back an email, it's not guaranteed that they're using a third-party encryption tool. So for example, if you're a CPA firm and you're sending tax returns by email, that is not secure. Or if your clients are sending you their W-2, which has their social security number on it. Or if you are a financial firm and you're sending somebody their financial statements and it has sensitive data on it. Or if you're a law firm and you're sending a contract via email, it's not secure. What happens with your emails is when you send an email, it doesn't go directly to the other person's inbox. It actually goes around to different servers all around the world. And if any one of those servers gets compromised, your email could be potentially revealed and exposed. So email is ultimately not secure way to share information. And so the best, most secure way to share something is when somebody has to log into a portal and view the document or download the document from there. Now, I know what you're saying, because I'm thinking it too. Super annoying. No one's going to do it. Well, banks over the past 3 to 5 years have adopted this, and every single bank I've ever interacted with and know of standardize on this. And you cannot go view a sensitive document unless you log into some secure portal with a bank. And so organizations are slowly moving over to this because sending stuff by email is not secure. And ultimately, you have to send things. So the idea of it is you share a document and it sends a link to the person where they have to log in and authenticate themselves through a secure portal. So there's lots of tools that do this. Google Drive does this. Microsoft OneDrive does this. Citrix ShareFile does this. Those are probably the 3 main ones we interact with that are all great tools for file sharing and to create a portal where somebody has to log in. The cool part about creating this secure login is people can download documents, but they can also upload documents to this portal. So in OneDrive, what you're looking at right here is the ability to share. It gives you, another reason why I love OneDrive and Microsoft products is they give you so many capabilities, almost too many capabilities of sharing documents. So what we do is we always share with a specific person. So you know, if I'm sharing internally, I could share it just with my team, and that's our company, NW Technologies Group, Northwest Technologies Group. So that would just share with people in our organization. Share with anyone with a link is not really secure because it's just giving somebody a link, which anybody that gets access to that email can just click on the link and then open up the file, right? Not secure. People with existing access, that's with people that, you know, are on your team. And then specific people, you enter in their email address and it sends them a link where they have to log in with that account's login. So, and you can add, you know, you can allow them to edit it. You can have it expire. You can set a password, which then you can, you know, call them and give them the password, or you know, add even an additional layer of security. But ultimately, the end goal, when you're looking at file storage, however you set it up, whether it's with Google, Microsoft 365 or Google or Citrix ShareFile, is you want to create a portal where somebody has a username and password with hopefully MFA, multi-factor authentication, on top of that, that they have that security in place to share those files. Because anything less than that is not the most secure way to do it and exposes your files to a breach, right? If you're just sending them a link, anybody can access that link. It doesn't require some sort of authentication to get into that. If you're sending them, that's probably the main one people do, is send links, right? Or if you're sending it as an attachment in an email, or if you are putting the details in the email body of the email, all those things are super not secure. And we've seen time and time again, organizations have breaches or lose that data for their clients or their vendors or their team when they didn't share things securely. That's why you see banks, and that's why you see so many organizations moving over to having a secure portal people have to log in. So I hope that makes sense. I know we got into the weeds there on file storage, but it's so important that you have those security features in place when sharing files. And it actually, once you get people dialed into the process, it makes life easier because you have this portal where people can download documents, upload documents. It all lives there instead of having hundreds of emails over, especially if you have clients that you've worked with for 5 or 10 years, you could have thousands of emails with documents floating around that get lost and whatnot. So having a central place for all your files where your client is trained, this is a big part of it, right? Is training your clients and your vendors and your team on accessing things through a portal, right? Accessing things through a central place for your files instead of emailing them back and forth. It is a little more work for your clients, but if you explain to them that, hey, this is the most secure way. I value your security and your privacy so much that I put in these security features. So please work with me to do these things the right way. That way we keep your information secure. And with there being a breach on the news every other day, I'm sure your clients will, and your vendors and your team will be respectful and acknowledge the fact that, we need help with this. We need to do everything possible within reason to secure our files. And one big part of that is file storage. So 2 big outcomes of doing this, sharing files this way, are number 1, you're exponentially going to increase your security. And then number 2, in the long run, it's the best practice, right? You have all your files in one place. You don't have emails strung out everywhere. You train your clients to share things securely, and it's a huge investment just in organization long term as well. So think about it in that way. Even though it is work and does take extra effort in the short run. So awesome. Before we jump into Teams, really excited to jump into Microsoft Teams and all the benefits of Microsoft Teams. I wanted to let you know, if you need additional help with Microsoft 365, we are a Microsoft reseller, a partner. We're also a Google Workspace reseller and partner as well. So depending on which provider you have, we can help you utilize those tools. Head over to nwtex.com/Microsoft365. And you can book a meeting with us right now, a 30-minute discussion on, hey, can we help you utilize these tools better? Can we help you move to the cloud? And overall, just help you be more cloud-based and utilize Microsoft 365. We can see if we're a good fit to help you with that. Head over nwtex.com/Microsoft365. The link is in the chat. You can just click on it, schedule a meeting right now with us, and it'll be with me or another member of our team, and we can help you with those things. So awesome. Let's move into Microsoft Teams. So Microsoft Teams, one of the best tools that has come out in the past. It's been out for a couple of years now, but it's one of the best tools that's really hit the market. And let's talk about what it's used for. So it's kind of a new area of tools. So we've had email for a long time. We've had file storage for a long time. We've had task managers and project managers and all those things for a long time, but we haven't had what's called a team collaboration tool. No pun intended, or maybe pun intended actually. But a team collaboration tool is something for, and really Slack was the first prominent tool to come out with this, where it's a tool that you can have instant communication with your team and potentially clients or vendors in a portal that, and then also meet and collaborate in this portal. So the reason why I think these became so popular was that people wanted a way to communicate with other people quickly without having to call them, which is so disruptive, right? If you're calling somebody, it's very disruptive. If you email them, it's not super time sensitive, right? So in the middle of being email and calling somebody, we wanted some way to communicate with people that wasn't super disruptive, like a phone call, but wasn't as kind of time consuming, as time delayed as an email. So text messaging is probably a great example of this, or great comparison, where texting is time sensitive, right? You get people's attention immediately, but it's not super disruptive. People can, if they're in a meeting or if they're busy doing something else, they can quickly respond. But the thing with texting is there's no track record of it, right? So if you're using texting as an organization, it's, as you've probably experienced, you don't have a track record of it. So you're like, if you're texting your clients or your team, there's no track record of it. There's no way to document those interactions. It's all kind of in your personal device or it's really not documented. So, and then it's hard to bring in other people to discussion. It's hard to collaborate, have a meeting around something, share a document. So texting is kind of a great example of what these team collaboration tools were looking to replace, I think, in a lot of ways. But then there's so much more than that. So Teams gives you the ability to not only have that instant communication with your team members, right? Where you can just send a quick message being like, hey, can you look at this, or what do you think about this? But it also gives you the ability to meet with your team, right? You can have video conferencing. It's really, it's like Slack and Zoom made a baby in its Teams. And ultimately it's like those two tools combined, and Slack has a video conferencing capability. It's not that great. So it's really like, hey, Zoom, which is a really big video conferencing platform and webinar platform, which we're actually using Zoom right now, which I'll definitely touch on that in a second of why we're using it versus Teams. But it can also be kind of that instant communication. And so you can have as an example here, you can have all sorts of different channels and actually Teams, once again, Microsoft, they're not the most creative when it comes to their naming. They have teams within teams. So you have your different teams, and within those you have channels. So you have, like, let's say your team, you have your marketing team, and in your marketing team, you have your website channel, and you have your social media channel, and then you have your accounting team, and in there you have quarterly financials, or you have payroll channel, and each one of those channels, you can have different people on them. And this is a great way to kind of break out where not the marketing team doesn't need to necessarily see what the accounting team is doing, right? And so you can set up permissions for people to only see certain things. That way they're not notified on interaction. So this is basically how you organize it. You can have your teams, and then within that, your different channels. Awesome. So kind of some of the benefits of looking at Teams is really, there's a bunch of things here, and I'm going to briefly go through these here. Is some of the things is you save on average, when they surveyed thousands of different companies. On average, they save 4 hours a week are saved by information workers through improved collaboration, information sharing, right? Like if you want to quickly share something with a team member and you want to get a reaction from it, you can do that. If you're a remote company, we're a fully remote company. We have team members across the country, and we live and breathe because we're not all in the office together. Teams is our office, right? In a lot of ways. If you're a hybrid company, it's the same way. Even if you're an in-person company, Teams can facilitate a lot of that in-person interaction you would have had. You do it in Teams, where you're knocking on somebody's door. It's equivalent of sending somebody a message, right, in Teams. So quickly share information, whether in person or remotely or some sort of hybrid model. 150 trips overnight trips were saved by year 3. So ultimately, you just need to meet with people less in general, because you don't have to have as many conversations over the phone. What we find is it saves phone calls, it saves meetings, which are great. Like, I love phone calls, I love virtual meetings. They both serve their purpose, but they also can be very time consuming and not super efficient. So if you need a quick answer around a specific issue that doesn't revolve a conversation, Teams is a great platform for that. 45 minutes a day per week are saved by frontline workers collaborating with tools. 70% improvements from time to decision made by decision makers. So this one is super cool. We've been doing a bunch of hiring with team members across the country, and because we have Teams, we've literally hired somebody in like 48 hours and had 3 or 4 interviews with them, with different team members on the team, because we were able to record the interview, post it in Teams. Other people were able to watch it, give their feedback, and we were able to hire people so much faster because we have this central place where we're sharing a video. We recorded the Teams meeting, we put it in the channel so everyone could watch it, or people that were hiring people could watch it. And we're able to make decisions super quickly. Probably one of the best use cases I've seen from just being able to make decisions quicker was being able to hire people quicker. We're able to record the meeting. And a lot of that is just obviously being a remote company and having those remote capabilities, but then also having a place to collaborate and having a place to share that information. 88% of surveyed response felt having all of their solutions in one place saves time. So I think that's a huge area, right? Like we talked about earlier, texting or emails or whatnot. I don't text my coworkers. I don't email them very rarely, unless it's a client email that I'm forwarding to them. I don't call them. I do everything in Teams. It has a track record of it. It gives me a baseline of what's going on. I can easily add somebody to the conversation, right? Like if I'm talking to one coworker, I can add another coworker to the Teams conversation. Super cool. And about 19% reduction in meetings each week. Like I mentioned before, you don't need to meet with people as much. And meeting is super important for creating culture, collaboration, brainstorming. All of that's awesome. But we don't need to have a meeting for every single decision that needs to be made. Awesome. Okay, let's look at some of the features of Teams, some of the things I really enjoy. First is search. You can search messages, you can search by people, and you can search by files. So you can integrate your SharePoint and your OneDrive in Teams, which is super cool. So you can have your files in there. You can open up a file together in a Teams meeting or just share one and have it there. Another feature I really like is tagging. So let's say you have a delivery team and you're like, hey, I want everyone on the delivery team to know about this update. You can tag the delivery team so that everyone gets notified that, hey, this is super important. Please address this. You can also tag specific people on the team so they know, hey, John, please deal with this, or hey, Justin, please take care of this, or hey, Teresa, please take care of this one specific item that's on your list. Recent view is super cool, where you can look at just what's the most important, right? So pop up what's the most important on your list that you need to address in your views. Like I mentioned before, you can integrate SharePoint and OneDrive into your files. You can add apps. So if you're project manager apps, you can add those to Teams. You can even add a phone system. You can add all sorts of things to Teams to have kind of a central hub for all your collaboration. Some of the other things, these are things you should enable in Teams. That way you get the full capabilities. I don't have time to go through all of these. Please reach out to us and schedule a meeting if you want to go deep dive into all these different features and why you should enable them. But these are the things you should enable in Teams to get the full capabilities. Direct messages, group chats, rename chats, save messages to Outlook, pin chats. Enable all these in your admin console. That way you get the full capabilities. Some other things you should make sure you enable: team sites, channels, conversations and announcements, file sharing. Once, like I mentioned earlier, Microsoft, they give you a lot of features, but they also make it super complex. But these are super cool things that you should enable to make sure you get all the features in place here. In document collaboration, third-party app integration, built-in culture like GIFs and emojis and things like that. Calls. This is also under the kind of the call section. Meet now, scheduled meetings. You can do audio conferencing bridges, which are cool. Live events like webinars, things like that. Speed dial and voicemails. I'm going to touch on the question in regards to why aren't we doing the live events under Teams? So Zoom, we have found webinar feature in particular is a little more advanced than Teams webinar. They just came out with it recently, the past couple of months, and they're doing it looks like it's getting a lot better, but we're not confident that that the webinar feature in particular is as good as Zoom. So that's why we're using Zoom right now. For all other video conferencing meetings and things like that with our clients internally, we use Teams. We still use Zoom a little bit for our sales and marketing because more people use it. And I don't mean to digress, and we're getting towards the top of the hour, so I want to make sure I get to your questions. But if you have more questions on why Zoom versus Teams for meetings, please reach out to us. I'm happy to give a further explanation on that. Cool. Some other features here. So this is in a Teams meeting. You'll notice this is, you're created a meeting. There's this bar up here with a bunch of features. I'm going to talk about a couple features in here. First, there's the raised hand feature. I love this. Zoom doesn't have this. I don't see any other collaboration tool has this, where you can raise your hand. So what we do in our meetings, everyone's muted, and we have people raise their hand when they want to talk. That way, you don't have people talking over each other. That way, everyone gets an opportunity to talk, not just the loudest people on the call, me. So this is the opportunity for people to everyone to actually interact on the call, and you kind of have a process of like who raised their hand first. Awesome. So the three dots right here are kind of a drop down for additional features. So there's three different ways you can view your meeting. You can have the gallery view, the large gallery, and together mode. So the together mode is this one right here, where you have everyone in like you can have everyone sitting around a table. It's actually my personal favorite. It eliminates people's backgrounds. You don't have to have all the stuff in the background and distractions. It puts everyone, just their faces on behind a chair or in front of a chair, excuse me. This is the gallery mode where you have kind of just the person that's talking is presented. And then this is the gallery mode when they're sharing a file. And then this is the large gallery where you see everyone. This is my least favorite out of all the video sharing. It's too much going on. I get like a panic attack every single time I see this many people or all their backgrounds and all the stuff going on. So my personal favorite, going back to these, are either this one where it's just the person that's speaking, theirs, or the together mode where you get everyone's faces but no backgrounds. Cool. Let's move on to a couple other features here. You can, the meeting details. I really like this feature here where you can copy the meeting. So you click on the meeting details, you can click copy details and just send it to somebody. You can text it to them, or you can email it to them, and that gives them the invite to your meeting, right? So that's a really cool feature I really like. Another awesome feature. Oh, this is like of anything, everyone that's still on the webinar here, the most important feature is turning off incoming video. So internet connectivity, right? Whether you're traveling or you're at home or your internet sputters, it can disrupt a video conferencing call. This is an awesome feature that Zoom doesn't have, but Teams does have, and I haven't seen anyone else utilize it yet, where you can turn off any incoming video. So basically, everyone just turns to just their picture, right? You can't see their video anymore. And then you can turn off your video as well, just by clicking this little video button, and you can turn off your video. This will greatly, pretty much switches everything over to a phone call, right? You're not seeing video anymore. If you're having internet issues, or if somebody on your teams is having internet issues, do this. This will solve your video conferencing issues and just eliminate the video conferencing, right? You can still talk, and you can still share documents, but it turns off the video capabilities. Video is pretty demanding on internet. So if you're having internet issues, turn off your incoming video and turn off your video so you're not sharing it anymore. Basically turn off this, click this button, and then click the video button up here. That will turn off video for sending and receiving. That way you're just doing audio and presenting, and you can keep the meeting going without having any glitches with the presenter. Huge, huge feature. I love that feature. One of my favorite features in Teams. Awesome. Once again, before we get into the Q&A, if you need help, Microsoft 365, nwtext.com/Microsoft 365. You can book a meeting with us right now. We can go through your organization, see how we can help you implement all these cool features, and how we can help you with Microsoft 365 in general. Cool. Wrapping up the future of Microsoft 365. Like I mentioned, they're combining and standardizing on Microsoft 365. They're going to have a lot more endpoint management tools. It's going to come with Microsoft 10. They're focused on security. So really cool stuff for Microsoft in the future. Awesome. The benefits of Microsoft 365, really, the Office suite. Like I mentioned before, you get Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, and more. You get Exchange, you get OneDrive, 1 terabyte. You get Teams for free. It comes for free with the Microsoft 365 subscription. And you get a bunch of other advanced features as well. The main ones, my favorite things are obviously these four, the Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook. I use those daily. And then OneDrive and Teams. Between those 6 applications, you can do a lot with it, and then integrate the rest of your organization's stuff. Additional security features, they're coming down the pipeline. They're adding safe links, safe attachments, spoof intelligence, lots of cool security stuff that you can integrate with your organization to just add on more levels of security to your email, your file storage, and all that fun stuff. Excuse me. Awesome. Q&A. We got about 7 minutes left on the webinar, so I want to make sure I get to your questions here. Looks like the first question is, it looks like we're probably around OneDrive. Juan said, can I use and exchange documents simultaneously with another user? How do we activate these features? Yeah, so in OneDrive, you can share a document I'll go back to that slide with the sharing. Back on this slide right here, you can share it with people in your organization with a link. Or if you're in Teams, you can just share it in Teams. There's lots of cool ways you can do that. Cool. Next question we got. Awesome. Yes, we're recording it. So if you want a copy of the recording, you're able to get that. How can we enable the phone part of Teams? Great question. So Microsoft Teams phone feature is honestly not quite there yet. It's a great thought, but ultimately it's super expensive. So we still use a third-party VoIP solution for our phone system that we use for making phone calls, and we have an app on our phone and all that fun stuff. And we help our clients, set up a VoIP phone system. And we also help people set up RingCentral, and we resell a bunch of different VoIP solutions. So Teams isn't quite there yet. Some of the VoIP solutions like RingCentral can integrate with Teams, and we've been able to do that for some of our clients. So reach out to us if you want help with integrating your phone system into Teams. We can definitely do that. Their phone solution is very expensive and ultimately doesn't have all the capabilities that you want in a robust business class phone system. Things like auto attendance, call queues, and then ultimately it's pretty expensive. You have to add on a bunch of different licenses to get it. Teams is better than Zoom for meetings and webinars that need to be secure, right? Thinking client discussions in financial industry. Claire, great question. Teams and Zoom, from what I've seen, both have end-to-end encryption. So from a security standpoint, they both do a great job with security. Another question over here. This presentation is obviously slated in favor of Microsoft. So I'm compelled to ask the relationship between NWTex and Microsoft. Is there any financial incentive for Microsoft NWTex for participation in this webinar to move to Microsoft 365? No, Microsoft isn't paying us to do this webinar. We are partners with Microsoft. We're also partners with Google. So we resell Google and Microsoft 365. And like I mentioned, 80% of our clients are on Microsoft, 20% are on Google. And based upon their needs, we don't make more money selling Microsoft over Google, if that answers your question. What top 3 protection steps should we apply to protect our own personal data? Taylor, great question. I don't know if I have time to go into all those right now. Please reach out to us, schedule a meeting, and I'm happy to go through those steps with you. We use Virtue to send confidential and sensitive documents by email. When someone with Virtue can open the encrypted attachment, isn't this adequate for securely sharing sensitive information? So I'm not familiar with that encryption documents, but yes, if you're sending it to them, that is secure. If I'm assuming it's a secure encrypted file. But what that doesn't guarantee is they turn around and send you a secure document. So unless that software has a way for them to send you a secure document through a portal, that's why I talked about earlier, it needs to be two-way. Just because you send something securely doesn't mean your client I guarantee you your client doesn't have encryption enabled, right? That's very uncommon. It's very uncommon to have businesses, let alone your client to have them. So that's why you need a two-way secure sharing where you can upload a document and then they can also respond and upload a document in a secure manner. Michael asks, can you explain the difference between OneDrive and SharePoint and when we should use one over the other? The main difference is SharePoint is great for internal file storage. It's not great for external. So any internal related files or documents, it's great for that. It's not great for sharing with the World Wide Web. OneDrive is really awesome for sharing. So you don't even have to use SharePoint. You can just use OneDrive for everything. SharePoint is something really in addition if you want to have more internal capabilities. G. Martin says, why SharePoint and OneDrive? I hope I just answered that. Jim asks, for the project that includes external participants, would it be better to use Teams with guests or OneDrive? Great question, Jim. I would recommend using Teams with guests. Yeah, Teams is great for meeting with clients, especially if you know they're a Microsoft 365 user or they use Outlook. It's super great for meeting with clients, and we use it for our clients as well. Ryan asks, we currently use Teams, but also Slack. We like Slack as projects seem to have a better visibility. Is there something quick and easy you can show me in Teams that's similar to Slack? Ryan, reach out, schedule a meeting with us. I love to hear about your specific project management needs within Slack. I've used Slack for years, and everything I've been able to do in Slack, I've been able to do in Teams. So I'm sure there's an area to replicate it. Martin asks, is Microsoft 365 data backed up? Are you sure about that? Great question, Martin. Yes, so Microsoft double and triple redundancies backs up their data. That being said, so they guarantee things. That being said, if you accidentally delete something after 90 days, it's gone. Or if you negligently delete something, it's gone. So we actually are starting to back up the cloud. This is another conversation for another time, but we actually, we still back up the cloud. We back up the Google products. We back up file storage, your emails, because if you were to delete an email, it's gone after a certain period. Or if somebody were to negligently delete something or maliciously delete something, it's gone, or you have some sort of cyber attack. Google, Microsoft, all the cloud providers guarantee, this is in their terms and conditions, you can go look at this, they guarantee that you're not going to lose your data. They double or triple redundancy your data. But if you delete it, right, if you purposefully delete something or negligently delete something, it's gone. And that's why we still back up our clients' information. Let's see here. Brad, answer a couple more questions here. Zoom has a hand raised and it's longer than Zoom. Oh, thanks, Brad. Yeah, you're right. Yep, I misspoke there. Zoom does have the hand raise, and it does have that capability. Rana asked, you mentioned SharePoint for document storage. Not sure why OneDrive over SharePoint. Once again, OneDrive is great for external. SharePoint is great for internal. OneDrive, you can do both. So don't overcomplicate it. Standardize on OneDrive unless your IT provider says, hey, you should really use SharePoint for a specific reason. Awesome. And Brad also mentions Zoom Phone works great. Yep, we have some clients that use Zoom Phone and Zoom Zoom for meetings, and they work great. If you're a Google user, use Zoom. Zoom's awesome. If you're a Microsoft 365 user, you don't need to pay for Zoom and those extra features when you can get Teams and things like that on there. Christine asks, how does Teams compare to Slack? Kind of like I mentioned earlier, it has almost identical features in place, but Teams can do more. It has more meeting capabilities as far as video conferencing, webinars, calling people, things like that. Teams is like Slack and Zoom combined, whereas Slack is really just it's made for kind of that instant messaging, team collaboration. It doesn't have a whole lot of meeting features. So awesome, folks. I think we got most of the questions here. We're at the top of the hour. Thanks, everyone, for joining today's webinar. If you registered, you will get a copy of the recording and the document and the slide afterwards. If you need help, be sure to check us out at nwtex.com/Microsoft 365. Hope this was super helpful. And feel free to book a meeting with us if you need more help, or reach out to us at hello@nwtex. We do these webinars about once a month or so on different topics. So look forward to seeing our next webinar and look for an invite for those future events. Take care, everyone. Be well. And thanks again for spending time with us today.